mentioned I did a lot of tape work in the last 40. I mean, we've been doing it and building it up, but trying to the assignment was, we're not going to have all the answers tomorrow. We still have the combine workouts, we still have pro days, still have medical, all of the character stuff. We still have a lot of tape still to watch, but I wanted for you and I to do as much tape on the running backs and start to stack our boards a little bit more correctly, and also to get a feel of all right, what's this back going to provide in the NFL? Not everyone's the workhorse every down back. There's a lot of productive, damn good running backs in the NFL who do one or two things really well and work in a rotation. That's where the league is gone in a lot of cases, not all. But this year's running back class has been talked about since we started this show on October 22nd. And it's been talked about throughout the process. It's been talked about by just about everyone I've heard. We're all in agreement. Finally, everyone's in agreement. From NFL scouts to us to social media, everyone's in agreement. This is one of the best running back classes ever, right? It's stacking up to be. And so I wanted to do a quick history lesson. Okay.
Let's go.
2017 was considered the best running back class.
I was going to bring up this class too. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
2017 had 30 running backs taken. 2011 was also pretty darn good. 29 backs taken. If you want to go old school, if you're an old school person watching or listening on YouTube, watching Spotify, watching or listening, Apple for the podcast and more. And we appreciate all your support. I can't say it enough. But please support us any way you can with subscribing, liking, spreading the word. If you're old school, though, 1998 was pretty damn good, too. I'll rip through them. 2017, 30 running backs were taken, recognized by most people as the best running back class ever. Debatable. It had Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey. But it's also important to note, most of these guys were second, third, and beyond, okay? Dalvin Cook, second-round pick. Joe Mixon, second-round pick. Alvin Kamara was a third-round pick. Kareem Hunt, third-round pick. Deontay Foreman, James Conner, Samaje Perine, all the way down to Chris Carson. Remember Chris Carson, seventh-round pick?
Yeah.
Had some really good run for a little while.
Jamal Williams was a fourth-round pick in that class.
Yeah, and I didn't want to write down everyone, but yes.
Yeah.
2011, it had Ingram. Remember Mark Ingram? The Saints traded up for him, right? Like big time, if my memory serves me. But Ingram was the only first-round pick there. But 28 other running backs got taken in the first round. And the reason I say this is because I think there's going to be some similarities with this year's class. But that year, beyond the first round, was DeMarco Murray, Stephon Ridley, Vereen, Powell, Jaquiz, right?
Yeah.
But there were also a lot of non-factors in that class.
Right.
And you go back to that old school class. I just love mentioning some of these old names: Curtis Enos, Fred Taylor, Robert Edwards, John Avery, John Ritchie, Amon Green, Robert Holcomb, Michael Pittman, Curtis Alexander, Fuamatu Ma'afala, Fred Beasley. That was a damn good class too. All right.
I wonder how many listeners are like, who are those guys?
I know. But that's the backdrop. And here's why I wanted to talk about 2017. And I got I'm going to make you really happy, Mensch. I didn't even preface this, or I didn't even send you a text or let you know. When you're right, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right.
About everything?
I've watched Omari and Hampton. I've watched Travion Henderson. I've watched Caleb Johnson. I've watched Ashton Jinty. I've watched Judkins and Scadaboo and Harvey and James and all those guys. But I haven't. This is the first time I took the time to go and go back to back to back and rotate. And Omari and Hampton is absolutely, without question, undoubtedly, the second best running back in this class behind Ashton Jinty. And there probably should be a little bit more of a discussion about he's not that far off. Jinty's the number one guy. I get Omari and Hampton is an absolute freak. And I want to get into all that with you. So my rankings have changed. But my point is on this, yes, and they will not change back again unless something catastrophic or unforeseen occurs. Henderson may be the second back taken in the draft. I don't care. I think Omari and Hampton is special. When I start stacking the tape, there's a difference. He does it all. We'll get into it. But the reason I bring this up is I go back to 2017. I think Ashton Jeanty can be something similar in the same ballpark as Christian McCaffrey.
Yep.
Their versatility, their run style, their body types, there's not a big difference between the two. Okay. So he's the Christian McCaffrey of the class, if you will. I think Omarion Hampton is a better, I don't want to say better. How do I frame this? I think he's lighter on his feet and he doesn't need the runway than Fournette needed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go.
So we've got our Fournette McCaffrey of the crew. Then you got Cook and Mixon and Kamara. TreVeyon Henderson can provide that, you know. I think I look at guys down the line like RJ Harvey, Caleb Johnson. So I'm just saying there's some similarities in that class. Okay. Where are you? Where did your running back journey take you? But I wanted to start with just saying, when you're right, I'm happy to admit it. And you were right. And I love Caleb Johnson. TreVeyon Henderson, I envision him perfectly in a scenario like Jahmyr Gibbs had, like Devon Achane has had, you know, a little bit when he's been in a rotation.
Swift.
I envision that perfectly for TreVeyon Henderson. And so his value as a top 40-ish pick will be there. But when you're talking about guys who will transcend, who will just work, who can be the workhorse, I think Jeanty and Hampton are clearly the most complete backs in this class.
I agree. I mean, I've said it before. I think Hampton's Joe Mixon, which is interesting because he was in that 2017 class.
Yeah.
He's not Joe Mixon was an absolute weapon in the passing game when he was at Oklahoma. I don't think Hampton has been quite that level, but I think he has the tools to get there. I think he's going to be great. I think that for me, Jeanty is more of a Kamara. I see him more as a Kamara than a McCaffrey, but again, splitting hairs. It's very interesting that some of the comps that I came up with, Cam Scatterbo, James Conner. I see Cam Scatterbo when I see James Conner. Kind of flipping the script on that one is that James Conner wasn't a great receiver at Pitt, but really developed into one once he got to the pro level. Big backs, tough to tackle, versatile. I think Cam Scatterbo reminds me of James Conner. I mean, it's interesting that you can go into these and start comparing these players. And then again, I'm kind of all over the place. I'm trying to figure out how many of these guys. I don't think more than one goes in the first, but I think as many as three could. And then you're looking.
I don't
at guys
disagree. That is perfectly stated.
If I had
just real quickly, if FanDuel's probably going to set it at 1. Right. Maybe 1.5. So you're forced to take the under with just 1 being Jeanty, and the over if either Hampton or. And what's interesting here, now going into the conversations, it's not that I don't get a lot of love about Omarion Hampton. It's that I just haven't talked to people who have asked me about it or it has come up. So I'm going to have to start throwing it out there and getting feelers as we get a little closer. But the conversations have been about some of these other backs, like the Scatterboos, the Harveys, the Martinezes, like guys from area scouts who had that area or cross-checking. Those are the conversations I'm having with scouts. And then I told you, like a personnel director we talked to, he just wanted to talk about Henderson and Judkins, but Henderson. So, but Hampton's kind of flying under the radar a little bit. And I don't know why. I don't know why. And maybe he's not. And a lot of times when guys are flying under the radar and no one's talking about it, it's because they just don't want a lot of attention. No one wants you to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not this isn't a big trade secret, but it's just interesting how we talk about Jeanty so much and Henderson and Judkins so much and Scatterbo. And I get it. They were playing in the college football playoff and there was a tension on them. But Hampton is just kind of not catching that same love and drive nationally. And I'm interested to see how this plays out. It's interesting. To answer your question, I think absolutely based off the talent, it wouldn't shock me at all if 2 or 3 running backs came off the board with Henderson and or Judkins.
Right.
You're Henderson and or Hampton. But I also look at this defensive front class, Like
I
the
know,
edges,
right?
the interior defensive linemen. The offensive line class isn't great, but there's still a handful of them. You got a couple interior guys. You got like 3 or maybe 4 tackles. You got 2 or 3 quarterbacks. Like, I just don't know, because we keep talking about this, and I'm principled, man. I
Don't do it.
wouldn't do it. I
Yeah,
wouldn't do it.
don't do it.
I'm taking these defensive linemen at premium picks on premium positions. However, it won't shock me.
Right. I mean, you're looking at Dallas to Genti to Dallas seems like a very popular pick, right? You're thinking Minnesota. Does Minnesota maybe take one? Does Kansas City get there and say, man, if we had an Amari and Hampton in this offense, I know we have other needs, and I know there's other places we could go right here. Does Kansas City maybe? Do the Raiders or Browns trade back into the end of the first round and maybe get one?
I wrote down this
to
list because I figured there's going to be a lot of people tuning into the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, that are fans of different NFL teams now. I feel like the vast majority of our audience was college football for a long time. And now,
right,
just like we're transitioning, I think our audiences, hopefully the numbers would concur. We're adding more of an NFL audience now. So I came up with a list of these teams. And again, I think more than 20 teams, maybe 25 teams could wind up drafting a running back in this 7-round process. Because we could have around 30 running backs taken if it's anything like 2017, 2011, 1998. So I'm not limiting it to this. But what I'm saying is these are the teams that I won't be surprised that I think are probably going to draft a running back in the first 3, certainly 4 rounds. Cowboys with Rico Dowdle as a free agent. Deuce Vaughn's their backup. Bears, DeAndre Swift and Roshan Johnson. Vikings, UFAs, Aaron Jones and Cam Akers, okay? Browns, Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford. Patriots, Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. Trying to there needs an upgrade. That whole offense just needs a kick in terms of playmakers and difference makers, okay? Then most of the AFC West, maybe all of it if you're right on Kansas City. But the other teams in the AFC West, you get the Broncos with Javonte Williams and Audric Estime, both free UFAs, both undrafted UFAs, right? Unrestricted free agents. Sincere McCormick and UFAs, Amir Abdullah and Alex Madison for the Raiders. The Chargers, unrestricted free agent J.K. Dobbins. Like, that's my list. So that's the Cowboys, Bears, Vikings, Browns, Patriots, Broncos, Raiders, Chargers are all teams that could be in that market in the first 3 rounds for a lot of these guys. Okay. Correct. No, I'm not saying that by any stretch.
You're sitting there and you're like, hey, we can get Dylan Sampson on day 2. What are we doing?
Totally agree.
And I know Dylan Sampson's not Hampton, but if you watch Dylan Sampson, he's pretty damn good, man. I wouldn't mind getting a Dylan Sampson or, Damian Martinez or, whoever you like. I'm watching DJ Giddens and I'm texting you clips of him last night and I'm like, they're all so good. They're just all so good. I don't know what to do. They're all so good. The combine's going to be very important for this class. How these guys work out, how they check out medically, what we hear about interviews. This is going to be, anytime you're a part of the draft process, it's competitive. This is going to be a competitive group.
And I want people to understand, like at cornerback, it's hugely important what you run and what your arm length is. That combination, it's more important. The 40 time and arm length combination is more important probably than any 2 traits that are measured or timed for any position. And there are other positions like wide receiver, obviously, and different. Well, when we get to the combine, we have the measurements that matter list that mentioned I've spent years developing and crafting for each position. We'll walk through all of it and we'll have a lot of fun with it. But my point is, at running back, like there's no make or break. We all know like Emmitt Smith didn't run a good 40, like all that stuff. There's no make or break number. There's no like critical factor that you have to be for the most part, right? But when you got so many running backs, and let's throw up this list. I had 36 guys with draftable grades last night, Mensch, and we haven't even gotten the combine list. I'm sure there's always 2 or 3 that we just don't, we haven't done the tape on yet. But I've got 36 guys with a 32 grade or higher, meaning late 7th round. Okay. When you've got that number of guys, and if you're watching on YouTube or on Spotify, you can see our list of the top 10 running backs there. And I'll get to in a second, but I just want to have that as a backdrop. When you've got all these guys after Ginty and Hampton and Henderson and Johnson, and to a certain degree, maybe Judkins, or I'd say after maybe Judkins, but you might even want to include him in the list. We talked, and I like the phrasing, put them into buckets. We talked to Eric DeCosta, the GM of the Ravens. That's how their phraseology, if you will. Let's get them into buckets, meaning what's our grade, and then we got to sort them out within buckets. And he even readily admitted his cocktail, as he called it, where like 124 or 140, whatever it was, ingredients go into this cocktail that they stir up and it spits out information. He told us that, he told us some stuff off air that I don't want to disclose, but essentially there's a process and they feel comfortable with certain, getting guys into buckets, and then they use assistants inside that bucket. So this year inside of a grade bucket could be 4, 5, 6 running backs. Okay.
Yeah. Now what do you do?
And a lot of those things that go into those ingredients, and I know fans got all worked up and excited about or disgruntled by or whatever, to me, just fascinating. Like even the Madden ratings. Well, guess what the Madden ratings are based off of? Speed and workout numbers. And also they have their own evaluation. So there's just so many different things, but the combine produces a lot of those official numbers. And so when you're creating a cocktail of information that goes into helping sort out guys on your board that you're going to wind up drafting that are within a grade spot in that bucket, if you will, it's critically important.
Yeah. By the way, that cocktail, that recipe, DeCosta's always fine tuning it. And when you look at their record, anyone who's upset about the Madden ratings or saying anything about that, the way they pick players speaks for itself, man. I mean, he's saying after doing this for years,
if there's 125, 140, whatever it was, cocktail, that means it's less than like a half. It's like a 0.5%. Like
right, and it's like anytime you make a drink at home or you make a dish at home or you're cooking, you're like, what?
Drop
next
like
time,
a little bitters into it.
I'm gonna do a little more salt, a little less garlic, whatever you're doing. That's what they've done. They fine-tuned that process.
And you only can fine-tune it over years of data.
Right.
And the projection, and going back and looking 3 years later, then 5 years later, and 7 years later, and second contracts and success in the league and all those things. You don't, and as players change and body types change and people get faster and bigger and stronger, like that's always going to be fine-tuning.